Welcome to the Collide Kids podcast, hosted by Christen Clark. This is a show for kids and families. You are going to meet new people and have fun while you listen. Let's do it!
Hey y'all, welcome to the Collide Kids podcast. I'm your host, Christen Clark. The Collide Kids podcast is a show for kids and families where we learn together how life and faith collide. It means so much to me that you are listening today, so thank you for being here and spending this time with me. If this is your first time listening, I just want to say welcome. I am glad you're here as well. I hope you enjoy it and you keep coming back for more. Be sure to listen to the end of every episode. That's where we have the kids only segment where kids just like you get to be on the podcast. Well, if you enjoy what you hear today, I hope that you will take some time to share it with friends and family on your social media, send it in a text, let somebody know why you like to listen to the podcast. And be sure to leave a rating and a review if you have not already. Those are so special. I love reading those, and they really do help other people find out about the show. Well, have you ever asked questions like, who created God? How old is God? Will there be animals in heaven? Why does bad stuff happen? And you didn't know or didn't have the answer, or your parents didn't know, or your teacher didn't know? Those are big questions. And I love that we're getting to talk with someone today who has written a book about the big questions that we ask God, and he's going to answer some of the questions. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear my conversation with Sandy Silverthorne. He has been writing and illustrating books since 1988 with nearly 1 million copies sold. He is an award-winning creator of the Great Bible Adventure Children's Series, several joke books for kids, The Best Worst Dad Jokes, and his new book, Kids' Big Questions for God. Sandy has worked as a cartoonist, author, illustrator, actor, pastor, speaker, and comedian. Apparently, it's hard for him to focus. I'm really excited for us to learn together, so here is my conversation with my friend Sandy Silverthorne.
So. Yep, I get that. You have a couple dogs that may join us, at least verbally, so don't be surprised.
Perfect.
Yeah.
My dog can join your dog. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Well, Sandy Silverthorne, thank you so much for being on the Collide Kids podcast today.
Thank you. I love your podcast. First of all, I love the name Collide Kids, where faith and life collide. I just love that. So.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I am so excited to talk to you today. Will you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, what I do now is I write and illustrate mostly Christian children's books. It's been a long journey. I started out. I grew up in Southern California. And I just had the show business thing going from a very early age. I thought I wanted to be an actor or a comedian and be on a sitcom, something like that. And so I followed all those steps. I majored in drama in college. And I actually even worked as a tour guide at Universal Studios for a while with some really fun people. Did plays, did a few commercials. I was even in the background of soap operas and things. But it was just really evident the whole time that that wasn't really God's plan for me. I have a bit of a hard head. It takes God sometimes a few times to talk to me so that I really listen. But after a while, I realized I wasn't going to be an actor. That wasn't God's plan for me. And so when I met my wife, we had a child. We have one daughter who's now grown. And we decided to leave the LA area and move up here to the Northwest. We ended up in Eugene, Oregon. And I'll try to make it short, but my wife went to a Bible study from our church, met another lady who had just moved there about 3 months before us. And she said to my wife, Vicki, what does your husband do? And Vicki said, oh, he's a cartoonist. He's an illustrator. He likes to draw and things like that. Because by then I'd kind of put this acting thing aside and I was doing more cartoons and illustrations for magazines and things. And then Vicki asked this lady, whose name is Sue, what does your husband do? And she said, he hires artists for Harvest House Publications right here in town. So they quickly got us together.
Wow.
And his name is Fred, and we're still dear friends to this day. And anything that even resembled my style, he would hire me, and whether it was a $16 job or a good book illustration job. And after a while, I was illustrating books for them, and then they actually had some ideas for me. And I suddenly started writing and illustrating books, mostly for kids. I've done a couple for adults, but because of my cartoon style and everything, it really fits for that demographic of the, maybe 6 to about 13-year-olds.
Oh, that's so fun. I love how you came into this job. How many books have you written and illustrated?
You know what? Somebody asked me that the other day, and I would say more than 30. I think somewhere between 30 and 35.
Wow.
So if I talk to you again, I promise I'll count them and we'll know. But it's somewhere around 30. And then I had a chance to illustrate books for other people too, which was really fun.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, this is going to be so fun. I can't wait to talk to you about your books and all the fun things that you do. But before we do that, because this is a podcast for kids, I always ask my guests to tell me a joke or a funny impression. So what do you got for me today? All
right. I have got a joke. In fact, truth be told, I just finished doing 5 joke books.
Oh,
so
wow.
I should have
you
some
should have
good
a
ones.
lot.
Yes, I should. So, okay. What's gray, has 400 feet, and never leaves the ground?
400 feet and never... I don't know.
A plane full of elephants.
Nice.
I like that one. All right, I got one more. What did one elevator say to the other elevator?
I don't know.
I think I'm coming down with something. Okay, sorry.
That's
sorry.
a good one.
Got a couple groaners there.
No, I like those. I'm a big fan. How does one write a joke book? Do you write all the jokes, or do you find them or hear them in other places?
I had other people ask me to do joke books, and I went, I can't write 400 jokes. So then I kind of investigated it, and I realized that all the joke book writers out there pretty much borrow from each other. So that's what I did. There's a few in the books that I actually made up. But for the most part, you kind of borrow them and make sure they're kind of public domain and put in some, because each book has 400. And
Wow.
I've done like 5 of them now.
Wow.
So I definitely couldn't come up with all those on my own. But hopefully
so
there's
you're
some
more like
new
an
ones.
editor. You're like bringing them all together.
Yes, that's it. And then I also get to draw the cartoons in there too. So that's fun.
That's a lot of fun. I love that. So how did you get into drawing? Like, how did you realize that's something that you knew how to do really well? We'll be right back after this. Raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
You know what? That's funny. I was thinking about this last night. I loved it from a very early age. I'm talking like kindergarten. I used to love to draw, but honestly, I really wasn't very good. Some kids, in fact, I had 2 friends that kind of went through school with me, and both of them were really good. Even at an early age, they were excellent artists. They inspired me, but I never considered myself in their league. But I'm one of those people, it's kind of like the kid who doesn't necessarily have a talent for basketball, but he loves it so much that he's playing, shooting, free throws, dribbling, learning all that stuff all the time. And of course, you just naturally get better. So I'm saying this because if there's anybody out there that loves to draw but doesn't think they're very good, hang in there. Just keep doing it. And I had some great teachers too, like in middle school and even high school, that really they saw this cartoon thing with me, And they would let me do that. Even when the rest of the class was drawing still lifes or something, they saw something in me and they would let me do my little cartoons. So,
Wow.
so I just got better and better, loved it, did it all through high school and college. And the ironic thing is, if I was in a play or something, I'd be focusing on the acting, but on the side, I'd probably draw the poster for some of the plays too. But I never took it seriously. I went, no, this is what I want to do. And God's kind of knocking on the door saying, Sandy, this art thing really could work out for you.
And it looks like it did.
Finally it did, yeah. Like when I was in my 30s, I finally realized, hey, I can actually do this.
That's awesome. I love that mentality too, to think about if there's something that you love to do, but you don't feel like you're very good at it, there's probably a reason that you love to do it. So keep at it. Like you said, that's good advice for anyone that has that desire for something. So you've written a countless number of books, because you haven't counted, so it's countless, right? So you've written a lot of books, especially for kids. What makes you enjoy writing books for kids? What's so special about writing for kids?
Well, I think it's my family would say, my wife and daughter would say, because I never grew up. I speak at different camps and church services and things for kids. And almost always when I'm walking out the door to speak to a bunch of 8 to 10-year-olds, my daughter might say, well, enjoy being with your peers. But I think God has given me this gift of being able to hopefully take difficult concepts and simple them down. I'm, always telling the truth and always hopefully being scriptural, but to simple it down so that an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old can understand these big concepts about God and about Jesus, about the Bible, about life. I'm not an expert, and I gotta say, in fact, I even say this in the book, there's a lot of things we'll never understand about God because he's so ginormous, but he also isn't threatened when we ask him questions and things. But I've always, it's funny because even if I do something for adults, almost always I'm directed back to doing a book aimed at that age group, between 6 and maybe 13. There's just a freshness. They trust. There's a reason Jesus said, become like a little child. These are the ones who are going to enter the kingdom of heaven. There's a childlike trust, obviously, if they're a child. But there's a curiosity and an honesty too. They want to know the truth too. And I guess that's what appeals to me about reaching this demographic, as well as the fact that they're being bombarded with things that aren't true all the time now, much more so than when I was a child. So if we can put something out there that's true, that talks about Jesus and how much God loves you, I feel like we have a win there.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your new book that's just coming out in a few days, which that's very exciting. And it's about asking God questions. Can you talk a little bit about your new book?
Right. I would love to. It just got here and I love the covers.
Nice.
I've spoken at this one camp here in Eugene for about the last 10, 15, even longer than that, years. And I never put it together, but almost always after I speak, it's a real informal kind of camp. And kids will come up and talk to me, or they might even write down a question about God. And there's some of them are hilarious. This past summer, a little kid came up, a little boy, 8 years old or so, came up and said, will there be girls in heaven? And I kind of picked up that maybe he was having a little trouble with a girl in his life, either a friend or a sister. But they have the greatest questions. And all of a sudden, and I believe it was the Lord just said, this would make a cute book. So I compiled them. And when I knew I was working on the book, I actually asked kids to write down questions. And I used a bunch of them. And so it's been a bit of a process. And I think we have 101 questions in there that kids can really ask about God. And I mentioned this earlier, but I think sometimes we're scared in our relationship with God to ask him anything. It's like, I feel like I'm doubting him, or I'm not trusting him. And there's a real difference between trusting and honestly asking. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love all the kids' questions, because they're just honest. They just want to know. And so they're just delightful. And it's fun to put it all in a book. And it's with a publisher, Baker Books, the Revell section of Baker. And they are just a delight. They've just done a great job on the design and putting it together and editing. And I'm real happy with how the book looks.
I love that. And so the book's called, what's the book called?
Kids' Big Questions for God.
Okay, so big questions for God. And so you gave me a list of a few of the questions that were in there. So I thought we would talk about a few of those. Is that okay? Are you ready to answer? That sounds good.
Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I would research these things. So hopefully my answers are accurate and scriptural.
Yeah. So here's a really good one. Who created God?
You know what? The reason I put that in fact, I think that's the very first question in the book. That is the number one question I get from kids. Who created God? And when I'm up on the platform talking to the kids, I give them I basically say, no one did. He's been around forever. And I say, does that explode your brain or what?
Yes.
But as I thought about it, as I worked on the book, I realized, everything in our existence had a beginning. I even mentioned in the book, trees were once a little seed. Your school was built one time, even if it was before your time. Even you were born one time. And so I realized we're all coming, adults as well as kids, are coming from a framework of beginning, middle, and end. It's almost like we can understand that God's going to be around forever. But the thought that he's been around forever is just, like I said, it blows our mind. So that's kind of how I approach it. The fact that no one ever created him, he's always been, and he always will be. So it's one of those concepts. We have a little logo in the book called Brain Explode, and the Brain Explode is on that page for sure.
Yes, for sure. I think that's still something that people wrestle with even as an adult. So that's good that can be addressed in your book. Here's another one. Will there be animals in heaven?
That's probably the second most asked question. And I have that question myself because we have 2 dogs and a cat. And I would love to think that they're going to be in heaven when they pass away. Some people have real strong opinions that no, there won't be animals in heaven. But the more I look into it, I really believe there are, for a couple reasons. One is when God created, in fact, in my quiet time this morning, I'm right in the very beginning of creation. God's creating the world, and it's perfect, right? And what's in the Garden of Eden? Adam and Eve and a whole bunch of animals, right? So I think, okay, that's kind of a picture of heaven. It's certainly not the total picture. But when things were perfect on earth, here were all these animals. And I even maybe think we might even be able to communicate with them more in a way up there. I'd like to think that. I think C.S. Lewis kind of felt that way. And then the other thing is in the prophets, in Isaiah, he talks about when things are perfect again, when Jesus comes again. He doesn't use the word Jesus, but he's basically talking about when God is making all things right. He uses examples like lions and cattle lying down together, which in our world, we know that would be pretty dangerous.
Right.
So he's picturing, or he's painting this picture of this perfect world, and he uses animals to do it. So I would love to think that, yes, there will be animals in heaven.
I love that answer. I think I'm right along with you. Here's a good one. Will there be a McDonald's in heaven? That's a really good question.
I know. Again, I'm not totally sure. And I do say in the book, I don't think the Bible ever mentions McDonald's. But I said probably not because for a couple of reasons. One is we've got this huge banquet that Jesus does talk about. Often heaven is pictured as kind of a big banquet, and I picture anything you could possibly want would be there at no cost.
Yes.
We don't have to buy anything. Everything will be provided. And then I think at the end of that one, I said, here's this incredible banquet with Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and God. Talk about a happy meal. So yes. I'm thinking probably not McDonald's, but I don't think we'll miss it.
True. I just heard a message recently, and the pastor said that he believes that there will be Bluebell ice cream in heaven. So there might be some of those where they were just done so well here on earth that they get to elevate to that banquet up in
Oh,
heaven.
I agree with him. I totally agree.
That's good.
Yeah.
Here's another one. I think this is a great question that a lot of kids have can God help me when I'm nervous?
Oh, yeah, that's good. I like the way the book kind of flows. I really do believe that God gave me questions because, like I said, we had to come up with 101.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was one that he gave us. And yes, absolutely. I think, it's hard to understand how kids view God. Some of them view him as a perfect father who's right there. And then others, and I think a lot of people do this, including adults, think of him as, yeah, he's there, he's big, I guess he loves me, he created the universe. But frankly, he's not that interested in my everyday, I'm nervous about a test, or I'm nervous about, a job interview or something coming up. Or just anxious. There's a lot of kids that are really anxious. To be totally honest with you, I was a little nervous about our interview today. And I feel like God has, and you have been so great too, but God has just calmed my heart. So yeah, I'm all through the book, I'm constantly saying, you know what? Just ask him. He knows what's going on, but at the same time, he loves when we share our heart with him, when we share what's going on. And yes, he really will help us to get over our nervousness. And sometimes that means he'll direct us to a person, either a parent or a pastor, or a teacher, someone we really need to talk to, and God will use that person too. But absolutely, God wants to be involved in every part of our lives, the good and the hard. And so, yes, the answer is definitely God will help you when you're nervous.
Absolutely. What is one of the questions that was in the book that spoke to you the most, or something you learned that you didn't know before?
Oh, that's a great question. Like I said, there were so many. How does God hear all our prayers at once?
Yes, that's a great question.
Yeah, because I thought, oh my gosh, that's true. And so I think we have that logo on there of the brain explosion thing, where I explain that God actually lives outside of time. In fact, he actually created time, which is another mind-boggling. I kind of get that he made the Rocky Mountains and the Pacific Ocean, but the fact that he created time, but the fact that he's outside of it, he's not limited by time. So yes, 10 billion people can be saying prayers at the same time, and somehow he not only can hear them, but be there with that person and answer it in the way that he sees is the best way to answer it. So I loved that one. And I learned a lot as I did this book. I kind of figured, oh, well, 8-year-olds, I should know all those answers. That was the first humbling thing about this book, is I realized, quick, I got to find a place to look. So I would quite often, I would look through Billy Graham's materials, and I figured if Billy Graham says it, then it's probably pretty accurate. I can agree with that.
That's true. And that's a really good point. I think kids assume that adults have all the answers. They're going to learn one day and they'll be an adult one day and they'll have all the answers too. But it's a lifelong journey of learning about who God is and learning the Bible. I'm still learning things I didn't know. So yeah. I think that's really important for us to all remember. And for the parents that are listening, it's okay for you to not have all the answers, right? You can still teach your children. You can still teach other kids about who God is and what you know about him. And then just like Sandy, you can dig in a little deeper and learn and say, I don't know, but let's learn together.
That's exactly right. There's so many good resources out there. In fact, I just wrote an article for parents. How do I talk to my kids about God when I don't even feel that confident myself?
Yeah.
And one of the points I said was, if you don't know, just say that. Say, you know what? That is a great question. I am not completely sure, but let's go talk to our pastor or so-and-so who's been walking with the Lord for a long time, or grandma or grandpa. Maybe they'll have an idea about that. But it's okay to say, I don't know. Anyone who would write a book that says, here are all the answers about God, I probably wouldn't read it, because it's like, wait a minute, how do you have every answer?
You know, when my kids ask those tough questions, because kids are so good at asking really good questions, sometimes we have to say, let's Google it.
Yeah, that's
Let's
right.
look and see what the Google has to tell us. And then having discernment as to whether or not the resource we're looking at is right. But there's always answers to your questions out there. And so I think that's important for all of us to hear. Well, I'm really excited for our listeners to get a hold of your book. Can you tell us where it's available and when it comes out?
Yes, it'll be out February 28th, although people can pre-order it up to the 28th. And they could either go to bakerbookhouse.com. That's directly to the publisher, and they would get a good discount, like 40% off if they pre-order it, and no shipping. It'll be available at Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, christianbooks.com, any of those places out there. You can always go to an independent bookstore too. If there's one that you like to support, a Christian bookstore, and just order it through them. That's a win-win because you get the book, but you're also supporting a local Christian bookstore. And I know every bit helps with them right now. So any of those places. You can also go to my website. In fact, I'd encourage you to go to my website, sandysilverthornebooks.com. Sandy Silverthorne with an E on the end, books.com. And I've got little videos. We've got some how to draw videos. We've got you'll love this. We have a whole list of jokes that are in there. And some fun stuff and ways to contact me too. And then also you can order the books through that too.
I love that. Well, that's really exciting for your new book to come out. And I'm so excited that I got to meet you today and talk to you. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you. This has been a delight. You're a great host. And again, I just love the show. I'm a fan.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests to share a memory from when they were a kid. So do you have a memory you want to share with us?
Well, yeah, it's a little embarrassing. I was about in 7th grade, and my family was on vacation down at Newport Beach, which is in Orange County in Southern California. And we were staying in condos, and they all kind of looked alike, and I never even noticed that. But I was out on the beach one day, and then it was time to come home. So I came back and walked in the condo, and there were these 2 teenage girls sitting there that I didn't know. I thought maybe they were friends of my brother's, and a woman I'd never met before, too. I said, "Hey, are you friends of my brother?" And they both kind of stared at me. I don't know how long it took me to realize that I had walked in the wrong condo. The mom was really gracious. She kind of came out. I always remember she put her arm around me and kind of escorted me out the door, being very kind of like she didn't want me to get nutty or something.
Right.
But I was thinking later, I'm guessing they locked their door after that incident.
Just to help you out, just so you wouldn't come back, right?
That's exactly right.
Oh, I love that. That's so funny. That family probably still shares that story as well.
Yeah, some weird kid walked in our house and thought I'm surprised they didn't go to the refrigerator and start eating something.
Yeah. Grab a snack and take a nap, Oh, that's so funny. Well, Sandy, it was so great meeting you. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, and God bless you, Christen, and your ministry.
Oh, I loved meeting Sandy today, and I am so excited to read his book all about asking God our big questions. The whole point of his new book is for us to recognize that we can ask God anything, even if it seems small or really big or just silly. He hears us. And Sandy said, just ask God. He knows what's going on, and he loves when we share our heart with him, and he wants to help us. That is so true. The book is called Kids' Big Questions for God, 101 Things That You Want to Know, and it's coming out in just a couple days. So I hope that you will go over to bakerbookhouse.com or christianbook.com or Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and order your book and be sure to read it. I think your family's really going to enjoy it. He tackles 101 questions kids have about God, including some you've never thought to ask, and offers easy to understand biblical answers in a fun and engaging way. Be sure to get your copy of Kids' Big Questions for God. Well, now it's time for the kids only segment. This is the part of the show where you get to be on the podcast. So here is my very funny friend, Noah.
Why did the Invisible Man turn down the job offer? He just couldn't see himself doing it.
I love that joke. He couldn't see himself doing it because he was invisible. I get it. Well, hey, if you would like to be like Noah and be on the podcast, all you have to do is send me your favorite joke or your favorite Bible verse or maybe a quote or a song that you enjoy. Just head over to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the tab that says Kids Only, or you can find more information about how to send it to me through my social media. I'm on Facebook at the Collide Kids Podcast or on Instagram at Collide Kids Pod. And don't forget to support the podcast through your prayer, through financial gifts like Buy Me a Coffee, which is on my website, and leave a rating and a review. Those are great ways that you can show your support for the podcast. Well, I hope that you guys have an amazing week, and I hope that you will come back next week because I have a very exciting announcement to make all about the podcast. I'm really excited, and I think you're going to be really excited as well. So be sure to tune in to next week's episode. It's going to be so much fun, and I look forward to seeing you then. In case no one has told you today, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so much. Thanks for listening.
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between, and all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com. And know that The River is proud to partner with the Collide Kids podcast.